This is a video for how to go about creating a fully dimensioned drawing for number 11 in your 20 ISOs project in Fusion 360. So we will double click on number 11 in Fusion 360 and we will go up to design and we will go to drawing. We'll go to from design. We want to stick with the PLTW title block from other videos and we will go ahead and say OK. Now, once our drawing loads from the cloud, we're going to have to choose a scale. So we're going to come over to scale, and for my classes, we're going to choose, 1 to 3, and we're going to click on a front view, and we're going to go ahead and say OK. We're going to go up to projected view. We're going to select our front view, and we're going to project a top, side, and an isometric view. We're going to right click and say OK. We're going to double click on the view, and we're going to go to shaded and say close. So in order to start dimensioning the drawing, we need to place some center marks and some center lines. And one thing I want you to notice that if I just zoom in over here on our side view, if you look at this, you're just looking at two rectangles really with these dotted lines. I would have to place center lines to show you that those hidden lines, those dotted lines, are representing a hole that's drilled through the object. So if we look directly at the side of the part, if we come back up here and we look at the part, remember, if I just look at the side, you can't tell there's anything drilled through here. You can't tell there's a hole in here, you can't tell there's a hole here. So we're trying to show in the drawing is that we need to place that this is an actual hole, and we'll demonstrate that through center lines. So we're going to come up and click on center line, and what you're going to do is choose the lines the center line would go between. So that center line would go right down through the center of this hole in the front view. In the side view, we need center lines between here and here to show this center line would go right through the middle of that hole in the front view. And we need center lines over here to show that there is a cylindrical cut in this area here, this kind of hockey rink shape. Next, we will need to place center marks, and you place center marks wherever you see an arc or a fillet or wherever you see a hole, and you would also place them if you had a cylinder. We're going to come up and click on center mark, and you'll notice that when I click on our arcs, you're just going to kind of get this little plus shape that really just shows where the center of that arc was. So if I gave you a compass or I gave you something to draw, you'd want to know where the center point of that is. Where does the radius begin of that? That's what you would have. Now, if we have a whole cylinder of an object, you're going to notice the center mark looks more like you're looking through a scope. So if it's a full hole or a full cylinder, you're going to get a different little center mark. And we're going to right click and we're going to say OK. Now, in order to go in and dimension this object, we need to place some location dimensions. So we're going to come into dimension and we're going to place some location dimensions in the top view. And we're going to say from the center point of this to the center point of the other arc is 3. And we're just going to drag straight down to our first snap and we're going to place. The next thing we would need to do is say what's the location of from this center line to say this point over here on this side, and we're going to keep that in as 7. The reason why we did that is because in our front view we're going to place some radius dimensions and we're going to be able to tell what the full width of the object is by inferring from other dimensions. So basically we're just going to do some addition to find out what the full width of the object is. Let's come up and click on dimensions. We will click on the outside edge of this arc and drag it out, and that'll be a radius of 2. We have an arc here on the outside as well, and we're going to click and place that. If I right click, I'll say OK. Now you'll notice that the radius here is 2, this is 7, and this radius is 2. That means the distance from this center line to the outside edge is 2 plus 7 plus 2 comes to a full distance of 11. And we would not have to put in a full distance of 11 because we can look and add those up. We know where to start these arcs from by the location of the center mark. So we have another radial dimension to place, and that is the radial dimension of this arc. We're going to click, right click, say OK. We can double click on that and hit the space bar, and we're going to put in times 2. So we're going to put times 2 because there's 2 of them, and hit enter. Notice that I could have come over here and placed a dimension. I could have come in here and I could have said, let's go ahead and place a dimension over here on this arc. We don't want to do that because if we don't want to say the same thing twice. So if these are just the same, we can just leave that how it is. Now, in the front view, we have a hole that goes all the way through. We need to place a dimension on that. So we're going to come up to dimensions and we're going to click on the cylinder, and notice that that gets a diameter dimension. That circle with a line through it is a diameter dimension. We're going to click to place that. Notice that if it's an arc, it gets a radius dimension. If it's a hole or a whole cylinder, it gets a diameter dimension. That is a dimensioning rule. So now we've basically, done the depth of the object and we've done the width of the object. We know the depth because if the radius here is 2, the depth is going to be 4 because this is a full half circle. Now the radius is half the diameter, so 2 times 2 is going to be 4. That's your depth of your object. We know the full width is 11. Now we need to deal with the height dimensions. And in placing the height dimensions, it's probably going to be easier for us to do those somewhat in between the front and the side view. So I'm going to go ahead and place this little ledge dimension here on the front view. And then my dimension, the only other height dimension I need to place in the side view is going to be from the bottom of the object up to my center line for that hole that's drilled. Because if you look, I can just add up that, if this goes up to 4 and this radius is 2, the total height is 6. And I can measure up from the bottom and find the location dimension of that hole. And then this distance from here down to here will pretty much create itself when I create the object. So this right here is basically all you need to create this isometric view that we see over here. So if you were going to go back and create this in Fusion 360 or another program, all you would need is just this drawing that would tell you what your full dimensions are. Because remember, if we know up here, if I know the distance in from here is 2, I can come over to 3, and then I can also come over to 7 here from the bottom, come up 4, start drawing this part, drawing lines straight down, and I can construct this itself. So sometimes you get into geometric construction when creating parts, and when you're dimensioning a drawing, as long as you communicate everything the designer needs to know, you do not want to over communicate. So this right here completely communicates every dimension that would be needed in order to make this part. So this has been a video for how to create a fully dimensioned drawing of number 11 in your 20 ISOs project in Fusion 360.